Day 2 of a double-header weekend here at Pembrey. The Retro Rallycross Brigade set to do battle. The final is coming up for this wonderfully eclectic and memory-evoking set of cars. After the 3 qualifying heats this morning, it is Brian Hardman's Escort Mark II that tops the times. No four-wheel drive cars are here. He's got Gary Simpson's BMW for opposition, and then Steve Cousins. Hardman quickest in Q1, Q2 and Q3. He's going to be hard to stop in the final. So the grid is formed. Brian Hardman is the man on pole. Gary Simpson, winner yesterday, lining up with him at the front. Then Steve Cousins, who won his class yesterday as well. On the second row of the grid, you've got Mark Finch and Simon Hart ahead of John Cross and Paul Smith as the lights go green. And Gary Simpson in the BMW, the 325i, blasts away. Brian Hardman a bit slow away there, the former rally driver in second, and it could become third if he's not careful. It goes around the outside of Steve Cousins in the Citroën AX. And the pendulum tail happy. Ford Escort Mark II just gets itself into second spot behind the equally sideways BMW of Gary Simpson. The cars now come across the loose for the first time. No Joker lap, don't forget, in Retro Rallycross. It's very much a period category. And so as these two-wheel drive cars make their way to the hairpin for the first time, it's Gary Simpson who leads the way. He was the winner yesterday in the Super Retro class from Brian Hardman and then John Cross. It was Steve Cousins who won Retro from Mark Finch with the Fiesta yesterday. So there is Simpson looking to try to do the double. Hardman stuck in third place. Steve Cousins ahead of him now in the Citroën. And Brian Hardman's very smart. Escort Mark II goes through the chicane on an ever-dampening circuit. It's getting ever more slippery. Grip is at a premium. And Steve Cousins with that little Citroën AX may well have the advantage, certainly over the Escort with the front-wheel drive working well, but a bit of understeer is going to cost him, and he loses the place, in fact, going towards Ollie's and then onto the loose. So Brian Hardman goes through. This really does take you back, seeing Mark II Escorts being driven with gusto in Rallycross, because there were hundreds of them that were in the category from the late 70s to the mid-80s, really. Even after the Mark III with a four-wheel drive X-Track transmission that Martin Skanker and then John Welch pioneered, there were still lots of Mark IIs still in Rallycross now, even in stage rallying too. They're not that common to find, but they still look great. So too does this very rapid car of Gary Simpson, this 325i, former Super National car. He leads and it's game on for second place. Hardman keeping Cousins at bay. John Cross going through there, look, in the Lancia Stratos. John returning to Rallycross a couple of years back after an absence of something like 17 years. He's done a bit of circuit racing, and the man that used to be behind the autocross, car building and preparation business, now more into property. But this Lancia Stratos taking you back to the days of Andy Benzer and Franz Wirtz, for example. Now, battle on for second place. Steve Cousins coming back at the Escort here. Look, that gap's just coming down ever so slightly while they're squabbling, so Gary Simpson is getting away up front. Down to the hairpin. Turn into that left-hander. Brian Hardman still learning about Rallycross and the demands of actually racing against other people rather than the clock, doing a good job of defending. Paul Smith there, the Volkswagen vehicle technician with the G40 shaped Polo, going after Simon Hart's very sideways Escort Mark I that's all over the grass, and he's going to spin. Round he goes. Simon Hart loses it. Paul Smith avoids him. And the John Taylor Mark I recreation is going to get going rather delayed after all of that, as Brian Hardman now pushes on down towards Ollie's onto the loose. Now, having got himself ahead of Steve Cousins, not only is he getting away, but he's also closing, look, on the race leader. That gap between this man, Gary Simpson, and the opposition is coming down and down and down. Across the loose they come once more. Brian Hardman doing his best to get himself into a challenging position against the BMW. But that said, Steve Cousins now comes back at the Escort. That means Hardman's got to go defensive, and that's going to widen the gap to the leaders. Gary Simpson still has the advantage. Loads of understeer for Steve Cousins. He controls it, corrects it, and he's back on the power once again.
And he's doing a very good job.
But Gary Simpson looking to make it 2 from 2 this weekend in the Super Retro Rallycross class, and Steve Cousins there likewise in Retro. So Simpson comes through the chicane. Steve Cousins hanging on to his class lead. Meantime, John Cross in that absolutely stunning looking Stratos comes out of the chicane. What he hasn't yet been able to do is match the pace of some of the other cars, but it's just great to have that car on the grid, no question about it. So Brian Hardman comes across the loose. The gap is down a little bit more to Gary Simpson, but can he get close enough to challenge before the very end here? Through paddock they come, then the hairpin that brings you back onto the tarmac. This section here, the corner itself, very slippery because it looks like it's tarmac, but you've got all of the shale and the greasy top surface being dragged onto it lap after lap, and you try and slow the car down and turn in without losing time, and that's becoming ever more difficult for the drivers. Here, through the chicane, back onto proper tarmac, but you can see how slippery the road is, and of course how much mud is brought onto it, so the track surface changing, deteriorating really all the time. Look how dirty the cars are getting, proof of how wet and slippery and muddy it's becoming on this long off-track surface here. Across the shale they come. Gary Simpson leading, having run wide, going on to Hansen. The gap's down again to Brian Hardman, but Brian's running out of options, running out of time. It does seem as though when he's not going sideways, Simpson has more power, and he's able to extend the margin over the Escort there in second place. Here they come, down to the hairpin again. Brian Hardman with a little bit of understeer. That, of course, will become oversteer as the Escort pendulums back onto tarmac, but Gary Simpson's away and gone. Up the straight, up towards Brooklands hairpin, checkered flag being made ready. This time for Gary Simpson to score a second win of the weekend, a third of the year. They turn their way now up through the chicane. And Gary Simpson, who was a winner at Silverstone, wins at Pembrey, just like yesterday. What a weekend he's had. Brian Hardman takes second, and third, also a class winner, Steve Cousins. Mark Finch there, looking the blue Fiesta, hunting down John Cross as they get to the line. The Stratos is slow, but just quick enough to stay ahead of Mark Finch. But Gary Simpson caps a great weekend in South Wales with another victory here. Race results, first of all, Gary Simpson, the race winner from Brian Hardman, and then Steve Cousins. John Cross fourth ahead of Mark Finch and Paul Smith, with Simon Hart bagging seventh place. Steve Cousins then leads Retro Rallycross from Mark Finch and Simon Hart. Paul Smith is next, whereas in Super Retro it's Gary Simpson from John Cross with Brian Hardman up to third.